Hello and welcome back to Swift Goose. In this video we're going to continue off with the previous tutorial where we made the ice shard particle emitter, and here we're going to add our projectiles. So now we actually shoot the ice shards. They still won't do anything, but at least we can fire away and see how it looks. I'll put a link to the previous video in the description as well as the GitHub. Okay, so the premise is that if the user is down here and they click up here, then an ice shard node is going to essentially move all the way up here and then stop, which is going to be an action. If they click down here again, it's going to do the same thing. And if they click over here, it'll do the same thing. Let's open up our Xcode and do a new file, and we'll call this iceshard.swift. Right away we can change this to import SpriteKit and import gameplay kit. We're going to create a new class called ice shard that is of type SK_SpriteNode, and we have to do a couple things here. First thing, we want to use the ice shard particle, this file that we created in the last video. So let's set our particle emitter. Let shard particle equals SK emitter node based on the file named ice shard. And now we're going to set some properties that we're going to use to calculate speed, duration, time interval, stuff like that. So let's say let shard range is going to be of type CG float, and we'll set this to 600. Let shard speed CG float equals 600. And we'll also do var shard duration CG float, and this is going to be equal to 600 as well. Let's just set it to 0.0. Then we have our var shard endpoint, which would be where the user is clicking. Just set that to a basic point. And then we have a shard fade time. So let's put that above where the particle is. Let shard fade time is equal to double 0.1. And now we need to create an initializer. Init. So we need our start position, which is going to be where the player is when they click, and then the end position, which is where the player actually clicked. CG point. And we're going to get a compiler error here saying that we need our required initializer. So let's have Xcode do that for us. And then we need to call super.init using texture, color, and size. And we're just going to plug in a basic texture, color, and size here. We don't really care because we're using our particle emitter as the texture. So just an SK texture, color can be white, and CG size can be a new CG size of 0 and 0. Okay. Now we want to set the position of the shard right when it's cast. So position is going to be equal to start position, and shard endpoint, which is this one here, we're going to overwrite that with the endpoint here that the user clicked on. And then our shard duration is going to be our shard range divided by our shard speed. And shard duration is going to be used for the animation for how long it takes the particle to get from one spot to another. So now let's create two functions, one that's going to add the shard actions, and then one that's going to add the particle itself to this particular node. Func add shard particle. And here we're going to set shard particle. Before we do this, let's actually set this to force unwrap because we know this file exists. You probably want to take care of that a different way if you're actually making a full-on game, but just for now, let's just force unwrap it. So shard particle dot target node. So this is the target node that renders the emitter's particles. We want that to be the ice shard itself. So the ice shard is adding the particle emitter to itself. Self. And then we also have an emission angle as well. So this is basically a way to calculate how the shard particle should emit out. Right now, if you look at our file, it's always going this particular way. We want that to change, so if the user is down here and they're shooting up here, we don't want it to be facing always left. We want the particle to face whichever way that they're shooting the particle from. We can do this with shard particle dot emission angle equal to a CG float, and we're going to do a negative a tan 2 shard endpoint dot x minus position dot x and shard endpoint dot y minus position dot y minus pi over 2. And finally, we need to actually add the particle itself. So add shard particle. And the next thing we need to do is create the actions that move the shard from one part of the screen to the next one. We can do this using SKAction. Func add shard action. So using SKAction, we can move the shard around, we can play sounds, we can increase the size, we can make it fade. There's a lot of different things you can do with SKAction. Let's set a movement action first. Let shard move SKAction.move, and we're going to move to end position, shard endpoint, and the duration is just going to be the shard duration. I believe we have to cast this as a double since it's a CG float right now. So let's just fix that. So that's our movement action. We want to add a fade action so that when the particle comes to the very last point of the screen, it just doesn't instantly disappear but fades out. Makes it a little bit more smooth. So let shard fade is equal to SKAction.fade out with duration shard fade time. So now that we've set these actions, we need to run them. Run SKAction.sequence, since we're running several different actions at once, takes an array of actions. First one we want to do is shard move. Second one we want to do is shard fade. And then the third one we want to do is remove from parent, because once the shard has gotten to its final destination, we don't want it staying in the scene forever. We want to delete it and clear up that memory and those resources. So remove from parent, and that should be it. Back into our initializer here, we need to add these two function calls. So let's add our shard particle and then add our shard actions. Our shard is ready to go now. We just need to add functionality in our game scene to detect when the right mouse button is clicked. So we can do this by typing in right mouse down, and we'll use the same code here, self.writeDown at point event.location in self. And we can create this function right here, write down at point. Let's actually fix this up here too. So when the right mouse button is clicked, we want to create a new ice shard. Start position is going to be our player position, and the end position is going to be the position that they clicked. And now we just have to add the child ice shard to our scene. Let's run this and see what happens. So we left click around, and now if I right click to shoot, you see that we get a particle always going the same spot. It looks like our duration didn't quite work, because if we click far away, it goes too fast, and if we click close, it goes too slow. So we can fix that now. Okay, so we're going to come back to our ice shard. So let's grab our distance by coming back to our game scene, and we're just going to copy these here and paste them below our endpoint here. And this will remove player.position and just call position. And the POS should be the end pos. Same thing here. Instead of using the range, we want to put in distance here. And now when we run our code, we'll see that it always goes the same speed. So let's move over here. If we shoot a short bolt, same speed, same speed. They always move the same speed, just like the player. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.